So today I wanted to make just a quick video about the whole process of applying to grad school. As I am sitting here looking at my future about to change drastically, and it's been about a year since I first started really seriously considering this, and this is mainly aimed at people that are out of school. If you're in school, you should talk to the people that are there because they're probably going to be able to help you a lot more. But for people that are out of school, at least for me, it was very intimidating to consider going back to school, and I didn't really know where to start, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to. So I thought this video would be able to help if there are other people in that position. And this is probably more applicable to someone considering like a funded PhD program. I don't know that much about like master's programs or stuff like that. But I hope this video is at least somewhat useful. In general, most grad school applications are due around the end of the year before you're going to start. And in general, they won't start in the fall semester or the fall quarter. So it'll be due for me to start this fall because I haven't started yet. My applications were due in December of 2016. So you really need to plan ahead because there's a lot of work that goes into those applications leading up to that. So some of the major things that you need to consider is the GRE, the general, and the subject, letters of recommendation, the applications, and your personal essays, as well as deciding which schools you want to apply to. So the first thing I do when I'm trying to make a decision, almost always, is make a spreadsheet. So I made a spreadsheet called PhD Potentials. My spreadsheet had a few columns just across the top that I would fill in. So rank, which was my own personal ranking for, 1 through however many I had. School name, obviously, and I usually made that like into a link to their application page because that was always a little bit hard to find sometimes. Department, because sometimes I was considering multiple departments within a school because since I'm interested in exoplanets, sometimes that's in astronomy, sometimes that's in planetary science, sometimes it's in the physics department. So you still want to keep track of which department you're applying to because really admissions is a department level thing. It's really not the university, at least for graduate admissions. Location, so what city, and it's usually also self-explanatory, but there was a couple that I guess I wanted to make sure I had that info. And then I had the start date, which was the date that I started the application, and the complete date, which I filled in when I completed the application, their GRE code, so each school has a GRE code, and you need to know that code to send your scores to them, and each department has its own code within the school, so you'll want to know what the department's code is and what your school's code is. The application fee, almost all of the schools have an application fee, and then the application deadline. The decision, which was the projected date of response. Some of the websites provided it, some didn't, so if I had that info I would put it in there. It ended up not being very useful, but I was keeping track of it. Application requirements, so here is where I kept track of, do they require the subject GRE, do they require an essay, 2 essays, that kind of stuff, how many letters of recommendation. They were pretty much similar for all the schools that I applied to, but it's still good to have that specific information. And then I had a notes column, which was just for me to talk about anything that I wanted to add to that for my decision making. And lastly, I had the faculty/research opportunities. So I think this is really important, especially if you're going into a STEM field, but I would imagine even with humanities. So you probably have a specific thing that you're interested in within your field. For me, it was exoplanets, and so it's always a good idea to make sure that there's faculty there that are researching that or working on that you can work with. There was a couple schools that I had to knock off my list because there just wasn't anyone there that I could see myself working with. It's not like you have to make a decision right now at this point when you're just getting started, but you do want to know what is out there, I guess, and what each school has and what their maybe what their specialties are, what their strengths are. So that was my initial spreadsheet, and I started filling it out. And I was prepping for the GRE, and this was all kind of during the late summer last summer. The GRE, just the general GRE. So this test is offered year-round, and it's a computer test that they do at licensed testing facilities. The nice thing about it is that it is year-round, so you can pretty much do it whenever, but the dates do fill up, so you have to look and see when there's availability at your local testing center. And if you live somewhere that's not near a testing center, you'll have to make plans to go the day of or the day before or something. So it's definitely something you want to look into to make sure you know all the details. As far as preparing for the GRE, I could probably make a whole nother video on that, but mostly what I did is I had an app on my phone. It was a free app. I don't remember what it was called because I think they changed the name. It was like Ready for GRE or something. and it had just had questions, and I had a study plan, and I went through that whole thing, and it gave me the whole time, it would give me like a running estimated score that I might get. And the questions were pretty similar to the kind of questions that were on the test. I also did a little bit of the GRE practice book from Kaplan. The biggest thing that I think I wish I had done that I didn't is I really didn't focus on the writing portion at all, because I was like, hey, I know how to write. And I ended up just kind of winging it, and that was obviously my lowest score on the GRE because I didn't prep for it. So definitely prep for all 3 portions of the GRE. Going into the GRE, you can select a certain number of schools to have your scores sent to. And I recommend at least having an idea of which schools you want to go to before you take it, so that you can get those scores sent along with your testing fee. There's no additional fee for those first 4. So you at least want to know 4 schools that you're going to apply to, just so you can take advantage of that. The subject GRE. Now the subject GRE is a pen and paper test that is also given at specific test centers and is only given 3 times a year. So it requires a lot more planning, especially because you're trying to get your score into a school before the application deadline. You really have to have that test down. And you may want a chance to retake it if you need to. So you really want to take it as early as possible. And I made a whole video about the physics GRE, so I will link that so you can, I don't know, listen to me talk more about how I prepped for the physics GRE if you're interested. And not every school will require that. But again, it's the same as with the general GRE. You can send your score to 4 schools for free when you take the test, and I recommend making those the same 4 schools that you sent your general score to, because later when you're sending additional score reports, it's the same price if you send one or both. So I didn't realize that, and I I think I had 3 schools that I sent both to, and then I had one that I sent only the general and one I sent only the physics. And then when I was later paying, I had to pay for both of those schools for an additional report, so I really screwed myself out of however much money report costs, which is not a ton, but it's something to keep in mind. And then after you take your GRE, you can request additional score reports and get those sent to the other schools that weren't your top 4 or your first 4 that you sent scores to. Then the big thing that I was probably the most worried about was letters of recommendation. So if you're still in school, this is probably pretty easy. You just go to your advisor, or your professors, or whoever, and ask them for it. For me, I had been out of school for almost 10 years. And I was really worried that my professors were not going to remember me or were not going to want to write a recommendation for me, and I felt really awkward about reaching out to someone that I hadn't spoken with in so long. I reached out to 2 of my professors from the academy, and they both got back to me almost right away. They were super happy to write me the letters. They were really great about it. So honestly, if you're worried about this, I don't think you should be, because in general, in my experience, professors are really excited if their students want to go on to higher study, and they are happy to help them if, I guess, they think that you're a good, that you're going to do well. So maybe if you were the terrible student, don't ask the professor that hated you. So I reached out to 2 of my professors, and then I also reached out to one of the Navy commanders I'd worked with when I was in the Navy, because I wanted to show a little bit of what I had been doing in those years since school, and especially because I was in a technical role in the Navy, and so I thought that would help my application a little bit. I thought that worked out pretty well for me, so if you are a few years removed from school, you know, reach out to your professors, but then maybe also get one from someone who can vouch for what you've been doing since school. All of the places required at least 3, some of them allowed 4. So you might want to get just, if you do have that, it might want to be like your optional 4th one. What I did for my recommenders is I put together another spreadsheet, because I love spreadsheets. And it was like just like a cheat sheet for my recommenders, especially because it had been like so long, and like what was I doing? I had a list of all the schools that I was planning to apply to. So at this point I had narrowed down. I decided to apply to my top 7 based on the rankings that I had given them, and you know, that came down to, for me, a whole variety of factors, personal factors, like where my boyfriend might be able to work, professors that I wanted to work with, schools that I wanted to attend, whatever reason I had basically for applying. So you know, you want to start narrowing that down at some point, but it's not necessary. Your recommenders don't have to know, but it's probably something they'll be interested in, and they're going to have to know eventually in order to send the letters in. So I had a list of all the schools which I was applying to, and then along with that I had the associated due dates for the letters, and then it also said how the letters were going to be submitted. Most of them were via email. So I would put in their emails into the application, and the automated system sent them an email, and you know, I never had to deal with it. There was one that had a website that I had to send them that they had to go to. And then I included my educational information, so about my bachelor's degree, and also a later certificate program that I did, which was in accounting. It was totally unrelated to the field, but I thought it would be good just to show that I had been doing other educational stuff. I included my GPA, start-finish dates, and what the subject was. I also included a brief work history of what I've been doing since college, which for me was the Navy, and then my consulting job. And then I included my test scores for both the subject and the general GRE, including the dates that I had taken them and what percentile those scores fell into. And it was just one little spreadsheet, and I sent that to them to help them write the recommendations. I also later sent them a draft of my statement of purpose, just so they would have an idea of what my goals were and what my aim was in applying to grad school. And one of them caught a small error in mine, so that helped me. As far as the actual applications themselves, most of them are pretty similar and they're pretty self-explanatory once you get into whatever system that they are using. Unfortunately, they're all slightly different, which is a little frustrating when you're filling in this information for the 7th time, but it's not too bad. I think you want to start filling them out as soon as possible. For almost all of them, you don't have to pay the fee until you submit at the very end of the process. I had one where I had to pay the fee right away and then kind of did the application after, which was a little strange. But so yeah, you want to get started as soon as possible, even if you don't end up finishing the application. I think it's good to get all the busy work out of the way and all the stuff you can do, because then you can focus on your essays. So every place I think has a slightly different essay requirement, and you should definitely read what they're looking for. But for me, it worked out to my statement of purpose, which pretty much all of the schools required, and then I just had one paragraph in there that I changed to tailor to the school and the program that I was interested in. And that was the draft that I sent to my recommenders. A couple of places wanted additional statements, so I had to write like a personal history statement, which was a little bit harder, I guess. But again, just read their requirements and get started on it as soon as possible. You want a chance to let other people read it, proofread it, and get their thoughts. As soon as you're done with the application, you should really submit it. I don't recommend just waiting in case you're gonna, come up with a brilliant version or brilliant draft of your essay. Like once you think it's good enough, just send it in, just be done with it. Because then you don't have to worry about if you're gonna get it in before the date or not, or if their website's gonna be down or anything. You're also probably gonna have to maybe do a little bit of chasing down of your recommenders. I had to do this a little bit. One of my recommenders actually only did about half of my schools. I'm not sure why, because it should have been just the same letter, but so I had to scramble at the last minute and end up having to get one of my peers to do it, which is not ideal. So definitely keep on top of that, keep on top of them. I know you feel like a nag, but you kind of got to do it because it's your application at the end of the day. They're happy to do it for you probably, but they're really busy people and you got to be in control of your own fate, I guess. And you should get notifications from the schools when they receive them, so you'll know who you need to go chase down. And then after that, you just wait. It takes a couple months to start hearing back, so in the meantime, you obsessively, well, if you're me, go to the Grad Cafe survey, or in my case, the physics GRE form, and kind of wonder when people are going to start hearing back. I heard back from my first school in mid to late January, I guess. And then my very last school I didn't hear back from until April, so it was a no. As you hear back from schools, if you're accepted, they'll give you information about the open houses, and I really recommend going to as many of the open houses as possible. For most of them in general, it should be no cost to you, and it's a really good chance to meet the people at the school, get a feel for the school, get a feel for the town that you might be living in for the next 5 years. I think it's really important and it's invaluable, so I think you should make every effort. I unfortunately can only go to 2 of the 3 ones that I was admitted to. And then the big decision. So the agreed upon decision date is April 15th in general. Now there might be instances where people haven't heard back, whether due to the wait list, if they're doing rounds of admissions or something, but in general, schools want to know by April 15th where you're gonna go. For me, this was a very last minute decision. I swear I got it down to 2. I was down to MIT and UChicago, and I went back and forth so many times in that last week. It was crazy, and it was nuts, but you'll make a decision, and you'll make a good decision, and then you'll go to grad school. So it's a long process. Like I said, I started about July of last year, and I'm still not in school yet, but I will be shortly. But don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that might be able to help you, and good luck. I hope this video helped. All right, bye.